Tech by Tips.
Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. On this video, we're gonna start talking about a series on a NAS and how to use some open source software that is available out there that you can run inside that NAS for home media management. That's a topic that was requested of me. So I'm gonna be working on that, showing you how to set up a NAS so that you can store your files and how to run open source applications inside the NAS by using Docker. So I hope you like this video. Thank you. I've gotten a great amount of support by a lot of people. We are I think already over 150 subscribers to the YouTube channel. So I really thank you all. I hope my videos continue to prove useful to you. And if you haven't, please subscribe or and like the video. That really helps the channel out. So let's get to it. Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about what we're planning to do here, what's the end goal of this video, and some background into that. We are going to use an ESXi host. That's a computer that is running the virtualization platform from VMware named ESXi, and we're going to create a virtual machine inside that ESXi host that will run the Linux operating system with a specific variant that was created by the company named Synology. This variant is optimized mainly for low power devices, so it's very good with power consumption, etc. And it's very feature rich. They managed to create a nice interface for a bunch of Linux programs that you can use within Linux and make it very easy for you to use it. So I would say, first of all, Synology is a company from Taiwan, and they make low power devices that, well, mainly, they have a few that have good, decent power, but mainly their business geared toward home users with a low power device that it's able to serve them as an NAS in the network in the home, or if it's a small business, it also works there too. So if that fits your need, I would recommend that you actually go and sponsor Synology. They do not sponsor the channel, so they're not paying me to say this. This is just because I know their products are good. But sometimes you want to get, more kick out of your machine. There are moments where you might have a computer that is more powerful than you can actually get in a Synology NAS, and in that case, it is beneficial, right, to get the most out of your hardware, to run it on your own instead of having a box by them. For that, there's a community that was built around this, how to get the Synology software to work in a lot of devices, basically like open source. They built a loader where you can prepare the system so that you can actually load the version of the Linux that they use and use all the features that they provide. For example, some of the main benefits of Synology is they have a system for security camera management and recording. So it's one of the main benefits that you recognize Synology for, because that's a service that they provide within their operating system. But there's a bunch of other things. You can share NFS shares, Samba over your network. You can use it for personal use, even for like small enterprises, it works fine. And honestly, their way of working has been pretty nice. They managed to create a type of RAID system that maximizes the use of hard disk space, so you can kind of match disks that are not exactly the same size, and if you do it right, it'll work. So yeah, that's basically Synology. If you're not familiar with ESXi, that's a virtualization platform created by the company VMware. There are some versions of it that you can get for free. It just limits the amount of CPU and RAM that you can provision and stuff, but you can get it from VMware, and you can basically use it on any software. Like in my case, my lab is using very old machines, like workstations that in 2007 were very powerful servers, but now it's just like normal computers. But yeah, it's very useful. You can do a lot of things with it. You can maximize the use of your resources. So the point in this video is we want to be able to use an old computer, and we with the virtualization platform ESXi, spin up a virtual computer inside it that is going to run the NAS system. And this NAS system, we're going to use it to store files, to share files in our house or network, and access those files anywhere. And also on top of that, in later videos, we're going to build automation with open source software that allows us to do a lot of nice things, like for example, for grabbing movies and TV episodes and books and music and things of the sort from the internet. Of course, I don't know what the legality of that is in your country, so you have to, look for that. As far as I know, in the US, if you have a legal copy that you bought of that content, you can actually make a backup of that or download another copy of it for security, for backup. So yeah, I hope you find this video useful, and let's get to it. The first thing that we need to do here is prepare our USB drive that we're going to use to boot the system from. So for that, we're going to go into Google and we are going to type ARPL GitHub, because the automated red pill loader is found in GitHub in a repository. So it's the first one here that we see, FBE11 Nuto ARPLs. We go here and we're going into the releases, and once we get here, we download the image file that we have here and we store that in our downloads. And now that we have that, we can X out of here, and then we're going to use our Raspberry Pi imager to configure our USB drive. So we're going to select, there we go. We select our USB drive first. We make sure we erase it. So we start with the FAT32 partition. Alright, looks like it's already deleted. And we just have a USB that has nothing in there. Then we're going to go here into use a custom image. And we're gonna look for the ARPL image that we downloaded, but the problem is that it's currently a zip file, so we need to extract that. Okay, so we go into this, we use 7-zip and we extract here, which will bring us the ARPL image file that we're going to use for our USB drive. So now we can come in here, use custom, and then use the ARPL image. And we make sure we have that USB drive and we write to that. This is going to take a little bit of time. The ARPL image is not that big, so it should be pretty quick. Just give it some time to do its thing. We'll be back when it's done. Okay, almost done writing. Now it's going to verify the information written to the USB drive. Should be very quick. And our USB drive is done. Has everything needed to boot the automated red pill loader from it. So now we just remove this from the computer and plug it into the ESXi host, which will host our NAS. I have plugged in the USB drive into the ESXi host, and now I'm just gonna log into it. I have logged in, and we're going to create the virtual machine. But first, there's something I want to clarify. If you have a PCI to SATA extension card, like one of these that I have, and you want to pass it through to your virtual machine so that all the disks are directly available to the machine, like I have in my case, for example, first you need to do something here. You need to go into the pass-through options. So you need to go into the host, and you need to put the host in maintenance mode first. because you're gonna have to make sure that the pass-through device, which is the SATA card, is passed to the VM. But sometimes, especially with old versions of ESXi, like I have a 6.5 here, it can act up on you unless you fix something in the settings of the machine. So I'm going to explain to you what you need to do. So you go into the host, you click on actions, and you select enter maintenance mode first. I'm not going to do it because I've already done it, but just to show you. And then once the machine is in maintenance mode, then you have to go into the settings for the machine. So that'll be in the advanced settings for the machine. So what you do is you click on manage, and then you go to advanced settings, and you're looking for the option that says VM kernel .boot .disable ACS check. And then you have to make sure that that is set to true. For some reason, if in some versions of ESXi, if you don't do this, the pass-through would not work. Like, it would say that the device is capable, but then it would never like become available until you do this. So then once you do that, then you have to reboot the machine, and then you have to exit the maintenance mode, and then you should be able to continue with the process. To create the virtual machine, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into the virtual machine section on the left side, and then we are going to click on the top where it says create or register a new VM. We select create new virtual machine, and we name it whatever we want. In this case, I'm going to name it VNAS. Additionally, we're going to make sure that we start by selecting Windows instead of Linux as the operating system. I'll explain that in a bit, but it's mainly because if you start directly with Linux, it won't add a SATA controller, and we actually need a SATA controller in the machine. My apologies, the recording for this part was not working, so I have to re-record this, so that's why you will see VNAS 2, but it's the same process. So in this case, we have already selected the machine to be Windows because we need the SATA controller. So we go next, and then we select where we want to store that machine. So we're going to go and click next again, and then we're going to specify the hardware that we are going to assign to this machine. In this case, we're going to give it 2 CPUs, we're going to give it 4 gigs of RAM, and in this case the hard disk is going to be removed, the SCSI controller is going to be removed. We need that SATA controller, so we leave that as it is. We make this USB 2 just for compatibility sake. We don't need a USB drive. So now we have the basic things that we need here. Now we just need to add other things. We're going to go into add other device, we're going to select a USB device, and we're going to select the USB drive that we prepared previously. And additionally, like in the case for this setup, we're going to pass through the SATA controller. So to do that, once you have set up the ESXi host, you would go here into add other device, select PCI device, and then you would look for the SATA controller that you are going to assign to the machine. And that's basically all we need to hardware wise for the machine. It's CPU, RAM, we need a SATA controller, the USB 2 controller, we pass the USB device here, and the SATA controller with the PCI pass-through, and then we go into the VM options. And some things that I like to do here is I like to make sure that the guest time is synchronized with the host, and we need to make sure that our machine boots from EFI, not BIOS, because the automated red pill loader is an EFI type of system, so we need to make sure that's set up in there. And once we do that, we can continue. It'll prompt us for validation, and once we are satisfied with that, we can just click finish. Okay, now that the VM shows up in the system, Now I can go back to my original VM, and we need to make sure that then we switch back to Linux because we're going to be running Linux. So we right click that, we click edit settings, and we would go here. In this case, I was already using my Passthrough card, so for the video I used hard disks that are being passed directly from ESXi, but just ignore that for now. We will go here into VM options, and we would make sure that the machine runs on Linux. So we select Linux, and then we say other Linux 64-bit, and then we click save to save those changes. Now that we have updated our VM, we can just power it on, and we're going to open a console in a new tab to monitor the machine and make changes to it. And we can see that it's starting to load. It's loading from the USB. We're going to select configure loader to configure the automated red pill loader to give us the appropriate information so that it looks like we have a legitimate Synology box for the operating system, because the operating system requires certain information in its bootloader to load properly. So now we just give it some time. We have to wait a bit until it starts loading and preparing the red pill loader in our USB drive. Okay, now it's booting. We can see that it's also detecting all the hardware that we gave it. You can see that it saw the USB device, so everything's looking good. In this case, I am using two 40GB hard disks that are not the pass-through for the video, because like I said before, it was already used. So now it'll load the red pill loader. It'll show us a URL that we have to visit, so we copy that, 10.00.98 in my case, port 7681, and we open a browser into that URL, which will greet us with the automated red pill loader configuration. In here we choose the model. That's the first step that we do, and here we have several options. Our options vary because of the hardware requirements for each one of them. So by default, the DS3615 and DS3617 are the ones that usually have like the most compatibility. But if it doesn't work for you, you can always come back here and change it to another model and keep on trying until you get a model that actually boots and works for your hardware. Next, we're going to select our build number. So we have several options. We pick the latest one and we let it configure to use the latest version supported by the automated red pill loader. Next, we're going to select the serial number. So we select that option and then we tell it to generate a random serial number for us. The next option is for add-ons. So we're going to add a new add-on, but it's going to be the CPU info. We don't specify any additional information, and that allows us to add the correct CPU information to the machine. The next thing that we're going to do is check the command line options, because we can see the MAC address that is going to be assigned to this virtual machine, and we need to make sure that we validate that the network interface for that machine has that exact same MAC address. So we copy that into a notepad so we can reference it later once we are outside the automated red pill loader, and we can check in ESXi that we have actually given it the right. On this step, we're going to check on the Syno info, because there are a few things we need to check. We need to get rid of the support Syno hybrid RAID option, and we need to make a value change for support RAID group. So we go into delete, we select support Syno hybrid RAID, and we press enter to delete it, and then we click on add edit, and we put the option for support RAID group, and we specify the value to be no. and then we exit out of here. It should look like this now. Next, we are going to build the loader. When we are building the loader, it's basically writing all of the changes that we made in that user interface and writing that to the USB drive that is going to be used to boot the operating system. So it's a process that makes sure that all our changes get updated into the USB, so every time we boot, it's going to boot with those specified parameters that we just gave. It takes a little bit of time, so we have to be patient here. It's grabbing information from several sources and making changes to the USB drive, so just be patient here. We have to just let it do its thing until we get to the point where we get the prompt again, and we'll be back when that happens. Okay, now we get back the prompt, and our option will be now to boot the loader. That will be the next step, which is we're actually telling it, okay, now that you set it up in the USB drive, boot, and it'll show us the the things that we selected, like the model and the build, and it'll give us the IP that we have to try to connect to, so we can continue the process of setting up the virtual NAS in our system. So this part can take a good amount of time for it to load the first time, so be patient. If it doesn't respond, just keep reloading the page until you eventually will get the page to load and give you the user interface to continue the process. At this point, it finally has decided to load, so we can always get this by going into find.synology.com, and it'll show us details about the NAS that it detected. If we click down here in the device info, we can validate the information, the MAC address, etc. And then we just proceed with the install button. We leave it as it is and click next, acknowledge that the disk will be deleted, and go next. And here's an interesting thing. When it tries to install, it gives you like about the 8% an error that it cannot install DSM. It's usually related to the hardware not being properly compatible with your device. So to fix this, I just go back and change the model to a different model, and that usually fixes it for me. So just letting you know, be aware. As you can see here, at this point I decided to switch it to the DVA 1622 to see if it'll load correctly and install the operating system for the Synology DSM. So after rebuilding and rebooting from this new model, then we can see that now Synology DSM is able to install. I'm gonna let it go so you can see the process happening, but that was basically it. In my case, I needed to switch to DVA 1622 and just give it time to load, and you'll continue to see the process. At this point, we've passed the 8% and it was successful in continuing the installation. It takes a little bit of time for it to reboot and set everything up for the system. So then we get a prompt that has a 10-minute countdown, but in all honesty, it usually doesn't take that long, maybe 3 minutes at most. And then we get greeted with the setup for the DSM system. In here we have to do things like establish a administrator account and password, and then after that we usually don't want to install any updates automatically, so we select that option, and we skipped creating a Synology account, and it might give us an error saying that there's something wrong with the disks. Just ignore that for now, let it load, and once the system loads, then you will be able to create a storage pool with the disks that you have available. In this case, for the video, I don't have my actual hard disks in there, I just have virtual disks that I passed on the machine, but it would be the same process for real hard disks. You would just see them and you'll be able to use them like if they're connected to an actual machine, and then you can create your storage pool, and within the storage pool, volume will be created where you can actually store your data and share data from there to your network.